Hi there, Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. I'm trying something a little bit different today. I'm doing a video with my mate, Tom from Petrolheads London.
Hi guys. Hello, Tom. Hi. So we've done one of these videos before where we did some stuff about bikes and stuff. And yeah, we thought we'd do another one. We're a bit late on the follow-up. So as I think Andre said on a previous video, we quite often catch up for rides and trips abroad. And frankly, none of that's happening. So we thought we'd talk about some bike stuff, right?
Yeah, and it's very exciting. Last time we did it when we would have normally been at the bike show. Whereas now we're at the other end of lockdown in the UK. We're just coming up to the end of March 2021, and it's been a long old lockdown, long haul since Christmas. So there's not been a lot of bike stuff going on. But now that it's just around the corner, the country's going to be open up again from next Monday. And who knows, maybe we'll even be able to see people and go riding without fear of breaking as many laws as before. So that's all a good thing. So yeah, there's quite a few new bikes that have come out over the last few months. I haven't seen many of them out on the roads, but then again, no one's really been out on the roads very much. One of them that kind of caught my eye a bit was the new Yamaha Tracer 9. So this is Yamaha's new touring bike. It looks a little bit like a Multistrada, like the baby Multistrada, but there's a few things on it. So it's the same engine that's on the MT-09, a little bit faster, slightly bigger engine, slightly lighter. But they've just put all the electronics on it. So much like what you'd get on a BMW or something else, it's got cruise control. It's got this fancy split screen. So two color screens to show the instrument.
Oh, not screen as in?
No, I think it's just got the one screen, but then it's got the two screens, just to confuse you. It's also got cornering ABS and cornering traction control. And this whole thing is just over 10 grand. I mean, I think they'll sell loads of them. I really do. I mean, the MT-09 was a cracking bike in all its forms. So to put that package together with all that stuff for just over 10 grand, I think is brilliant.
But okay, here's I've got a picture of it here, which is why I'm looking over this way. I agree with everything you said. However, does it feel a bit like the BMW? Oh, I can't remember what it was called now. The one that had the S1000R engine in it, but basically was bolted into a kind of GS frame.
The XR.
The XR, which was a massive flop.
Yeah, I kind of think it's the level below that, right? I mean, I think it's more of a Triumph Tiger 900 sort of bike.
But the type of engine it's got in it, I mean, not ridden one, right? So I'm making a lot of preconceptions. But the reason I think that the XR was such a flop is because it had the performance like a Super Naked.
Just, any XR riders that are watching this have turned off right now. They're probably not watching it anyway, but if they are, they've definitely had enough.
I'm sure both of them are thinking about getting a different bike anyway, because it was shit. But like, it kind of just sat in the middle somewhere, right? It sat in the middle where it wasn't a GS, which is like a brilliant bike, and it wasn't a Super Naked, or, obviously I think the S1000R is great because that's what I have, but, or another Super Naked. So the point I'm making is the MT-09 is a absolutely awesome Super Naked bike, like undisputed. But if you take that engine and put it into a kind of more touring / kind of adventure bike, does it work? Well, we'll find out, right?
Well, I indeed. I mean, I haven't got one. I'm probably not going to buy one.
But only probably
ride one. I'll definitely go and have a crack.
Likewise.
Yeah, no, I think they've been great.
It's not a bad looking bike, and you're right, it's got oodles of kit on it. So actually,
that front end does look a bit Multistrada, though. I don't know whether it's just that sort of pointy beak, or whether the spotlights are just below it. But yeah, I think it's a good start. It's a good start for 2021, which as a year has had a pretty shocking start, but we shall see.
I'm going to talk about a bike then, if that's all right, which I haven't sent you any details of, but you keep mentioning it. So there's a new Multistrada out, right? So we've seen lots of changes in the Ducati setup over the last 18 months. So the V4S, and then they brought out one which I think we talked about in the last video, which is, I can't remember what it's called now, but basically it's a track bike only. But then they brought the V4S into the Street Fighter, which seems to be, I mean, if I'm honest, I'd consider swapping my S1000R if funds permitted into something like that.
It's just proper nutter. Was it 200 and something?
But I'm not sure it is proper nutter. I think it's just, you know, it's really well balanced. It's got carbon wheels. It's like the electronics.
They do look brilliant. I mean, that is a proper hooligan.
Yeah. But the electronics on it are amazing. Like when I rode the Panigale V4S, like that setup that you can adjust on it is amazing. It's like, I think I said on my review, it's just multiple bikes in one, and like when you change it, it literally totally changes the characteristic of the bike, like for the benefit of the rider. Like it can be very tame but also just ridiculous. But yeah, anyway, and I've never owned Ducati, and I think they look bloody beautiful, and the reviews are amazing, so I need to get out and ride one. And I really loved the V4S, but couldn't justify the price tag on it.
So wait, we're talking about the Multistrada or the
so
naked?
What I was kind of starting with is that's kind of where they went to with the Street Fighter, and they've now basically taken that formula, which they seem to be really winning at, because the problem they used to have is around town their bikes weren't great and blah blah blah, and now they've kind of got over all of that, and they seem to be on this really like good kind of like winning streak, and they have now brought out the new Multistrada. Now again, I can only base it on reviews I've seen of people who've ridden it, but it seems to be getting amazing reviews, even from people who are absolute GS nuts, who are saying, you know, this could be the winning formula. And I know that kind of, still looking at the picture of the Tracer here on my screen, kind of contradicts what I'm saying, because you're taking basically So do you
think the Multistrada is what the XR should have been?
But the Multistrada was more of an adventure bike than the XR ever was, even to start with.
Yeah. I don't know. I always felt they were just a bit more road focused. I know they did their Enduro version, which had knobbly tires and I think a bit more suspension travel, but they also had that Pikes Peak sort of special edition, which just looked brilliant.
You're saying it's more road focused than a GS?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. So, but they're playing for that market, I think. Even though it's a very different bike. But my point is, I think that bike is going to be one to watch this year.
Yeah.
I think it will do really well. And I'll get on to this is another topic. So after some bike chat, we were going to talk about, there's a few things I kind of want to talk about, and there's something that they've put on that bike I'd like to talk about.
Okay, right. We'll get to that in a sec. There's a couple more new bikes. For the back end of that last year, to be honest, no one's going to be riding them until the early part of this year, probably not until the next few weeks. So the next one I want to talk about, it's not really a new bike. It is a facelift. And this is BMW's new version of the G310 GS. So those of you who saw my video of it, I actually quite liked it. I know they've had a bit of a slating because it's kind of not really a BMW. You know, it's made to a budget. It's really, you know, it's not as special as maybe what people think they're buying when they're buying a bike with that badge on it. Having said that, it's for a little run around to try and buy into it, and I think it's really great. And there's a few things which I found were lacking on the old one, and one of which was the throttle. And they've actually put a fly-by-wire throttle on the new one. They've upped the power a little bit. They've put an LED headlamp on it. They're not trying to pretend it's an off-road bike anymore, even though it kind of looks a bit like a GS. And I think they're putting some Pirelli Diablo tires on it as stock. And I mean,
they're putting Diablos on it. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I guess that's because they realized no one was actually taking them off road because the suspension isn't really up to it. And there's plenty of bikes at that price point and below that would fare far better.
Buy KTM
later. But yeah, no, I think for the few things they've done to it, they've put a slipper clutch on it as well, just made the clutch that bit lighter. And I think it'll do very well. I know it's not made for the UK market, but they do sell it here. And I think for people who are looking for, a cheap run around, maybe existing BMW owners who want something that either, they're not going to be crossing continents for the next year or so with everything that's going on with COVID, and they're looking for something else, just as a little run around, I think they're cracking.
You're not going to cross any continents with that. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good looking bike. I think they've done well with the kind of colorways and the frame, but I must say, if I was looking for an entry level, do you know what? Reminds me of my youth. There were things called, was it AR50? Can't remember who made that. Yamaha AR50. Remember a mate of mine had one, and it reminds me of one of those. But yeah, I think there are better things you can spend your money on. You're going to pay premium price of a BMW for a 310,
Well,
and I
but
think
you know what? I think they are. I mean, they're what, like they're like $5,000. I think just over $5,000. I mean, okay, for that money you can get a Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. So, but I think again that's a very different proposition.
or some of the low-end super sport bikes, maybe probably in that price bracket.
But then again,
thumbs down for me.
If you're 17 or 18, and a lot of these bikes are out of your reach anyway, you're on a license and you can't get anything, or even if you could get something you wanted, you couldn't afford the insurance. Then I don't know, maybe that's
well, on the plus side, what it does do is it brings a whole load of bikes into the market that will probably depreciate like buggery, and then it will flood the market with them in 2-3 years' time, and it makes it accessible for these younger riders. So that's a positive.
And you know what? I mean, if you do want to go off-roading on it, I did see that there are Rally Raid are doing a kit for it, suspension upgrades and various other things to actually make it a far more capable off-road bike. Okay. Having said that, by the time you've spent all the money on those upgrades, you could just as easily have done the same to a Honda CB500X and probably ended up with a more useful product, or actually just bought an off-road bike in the first place.
Well, yeah, buy a KTM.
That's enough of that then. Enough of cheap BMW singles.
KTM 310. Whatever it is, 390. Okay, what have you got up next?
What have I got next? Bring it. Well, I know you won't have any opinion on this at all. Kawasaki have a new Ninja 10R and an RR out there, because who doesn't like an extra R whenever you can get one? So the 10R is going to be about 16 grand. The RR is going to be 25 grand.
It's a big hike, isn't it? Like, you want a lot more for your cash. But do you know what? It basically looks like the HP2 from the front, doesn't it? Like
it
HP2.
Does, yeah. And they're only making 500 RRs. It's got 1 horsepower more. It's 204 instead of 203. You're going to feel every extra
horsepower
on that horse,
but still cheaper than a Panigale V4S. I mean, probably not as good, but
it is. But yeah, like you say, it's an extra 9 grand for 1 horsepower and the Marchesini wheels. And I think they've only done it for the World Superbike homologation. So, I think, again, a brilliant looking bike. I'm sure they'll be cracking on the road. I do think Kawasaki stables get a little bit busy because they've got their H2s as well. I'm still not entirely sure where this fits H2s. Other than for World Superbikes. But yeah, it's brilliant. The Ninjas,
and it looks a bit like an H2. It's taken a lot of the styling cues from it as well, and it's obviously get bloody tail tidy on it. It looks terrible at the back, but I think it's quite a good looking bike. And I had a I had a ZX6 for years and loved it, and so I'm quite a big fan. But
I do think they are taking a look at the S1000R market as well. So I don't recall seeing the previous version of this bike having a cruise control as standard. Maybe it's just for those average speed cameras, or maybe they do think people are going to take this as a touring bike to go and ride around Europe.
No, good. Gets my thumbs up. But yeah, I mean, big jump, 10 grand, but 16k base price is pretty good for 1,000 cc superbike. Go on then.
What's next?
It's yours, isn't it?
Oh, right. Oh, I'll talk about it. Okay.
I didn't bring any. Well, I can steal it from you.
So everyone and their dog is doing a scrambler these days. Whether it's a rehashed air-cooled Boxer Twin from BMW, or the Ducati scramblers, which have been around for about 5 years now. And the one I want to talk about is the Benelli Leoncino Trail 800. So they already do this as a 500. And they're bringing out a 754cc parallel twin that makes about 82 horsepower, which on a bike like this, I think is very much, right on the sweet spot. I mean, I've got one of the Ducati Scrambler 800s, which I think makes about 70 horsepower, and it's more than enough for pottering around the lanes around here. Now, this one comes with a proper serious suspension setup. It's got Marzocchi 50mm upside down forks, fully adjustable, which a lot of the bikes at this sort of price point don't. It's got Brembo brakes. It's got TFT screen. No idea how much it's going to cost, but I know the 500 Trail is only 5 grand. So I can't imagine they're going to add that much on top of it. And I think at that price point, yeah, I think they're going to sell loads of them. I think it just looks brilliant. I mean, if you compare that to say...
It does look great. And it's got a little emblem on the mudguard at the front, which like a little prancing something or other. Oh, yeah. Looks great. It's a good looking bike. But yeah, I'm not sure where it plays. Like, it feels like it's kind of playing in the custom market, you know, the sort of bobber type thing. But yeah, it's, you know, slash
Well, I mean, but let's see.
oversized monkey bike.
Yeah, if that was £7,000, let's say, you know, that's kind of MTO7 money, a bit more than MTO7 money, but then it's, you know, got a bit more power, slightly fancier suspension setup. And again, it'll come down to how it rides as well. But if they've managed to pull all of that together and turn out a really, really, really strong bike for about £7,000, then I think they'll be taking, you know, market away from the likes of Triumph.
And remember, it's a Benelli. It will sound amazing. Well, although Euro 6 might put pay to that, but yeah, be interested. It should sound amazing if you remove the baffles, maybe. Because they always like, I used to know a guy who had one of the old Benellis, because I thought they went bust and then obviously
I think they have. I
reincarnated.
think it's another one of these resurrected brands. But still, they've got a lot of heritage behind it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they used to be part of Harley, I think, at one point, weren't they? Isn't that where they kind of started out? But maybe I'm wrong on that. Comments below, let us know what you think. But and I knew a guy had a Benelli, and he used to hear the windows used to rattle as he came down the road. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't get away with that today's. And that was standard. Like, that's how it came. But yeah, no, it's a good-looking bike. It's but yeah, not sure. Like, and interestingly, like, you know, I'm not really bought into the whole kind of like Honda monkey bike craze. Like, you know, if I was going to get a mini bike like that, I'd probably buy a Grom, because I think they're probably more fun. I mean, it's basically like a scooter on steroids. But this is kind of like obviously it's a much bigger bike, but it's a massive step up from that. I think you're right though. It competes with Triumph and some of their bikes. I think it would, and it's just something different, isn't it? You want something that not everybody else has got.
Yeah. So yeah, really looking forward to that. As soon as one comes to somewhere near me, I'm gonna give them a call, see if I can go and
buy one.
Buy one.
Well,
I mean, I'm going to have to make more space in the garage if I'm going to do that. And well, we shall see. Maybe. Anyway, right. So I've got one more bike I want to talk about, and then we can move on. And the last bike I want to talk about was a bike that I kind of hoped was going to come to the UK. So many years ago, I went and did an off-roading day with Off the Curb down in Dorking, green laning in the Surrey Hills, on a Honda's CRF 250L. And I thought it was great. You know, it's not a full-on enduro bike. It's not a crosser. It's never going to be. It's too heavy. It's not got enough power. But Honda sold loads of them. I think those have been around since 2013, 2014, something like that. So for the last 7 years, they've just been steadily selling them. And people have used them just for, you know, for runarounds. You know, the suspension's not particularly special, but, you know, it's fine. And then in the autumn, Honda announced that there's going to be a new CRF 300L that was based on the 300 engine out of the CB 300. And it looked brilliant, except it was only going to be in Thailand. And I called Honda at the time and was told, no, that's not coming to the UK. And then in December, there was a press release and they said, yeah, it's going to be coming to the UK in January and a rally version as well. So it's not really a 300. It's the capacity's gone up from 250 to 286 cc's. So really pretty small increment, right? But it does have 10% more power, 18% more torque, and gears 1 through 5 are shorter and the 6th gear is higher. So it should be a bit more comfortable for cruising at speed. And at the same time, people won't need to change the gearing. And a lot of people have gone to a 13-tooth sprocket on the front of the 250 just to make it more capable off-road. It's all the rage these days. They've also put a slipper clutch in it. They've moved from a bolt-on subframe to a single frame, which is 4 kilos lighter. I'm not sure how many bikes are going to get written off when that gets bent. But still, you know, 4 kilos on a bike that weighs about 150 is a good contribution. And also they've increased the suspension travel. On top of that, they've put this massive tank on the rally version, which I think is now 12.8 litres, which isn't a lot by adventure bike standards. But on a 250, that suddenly means you're pushing 250 to 300 mile range. You know, I mean, it's not far off what you'd get off a GSA. And then there's the price. So the standard L,
just a lot slower.
It is. But then, you know, it's $5 grand for the standard L and just over 6 for the rally. And on the rally, you get that bigger tank, you get a screen, and you get an LED headlamp. And I thought it was so good.
Go on.
I bought one. It's the first bike I've ever bought without ever having seen it. So I'd seen the 250. I was pretty sure I knew what that was. And the fact that none of these things on their own, I thought made a big enough difference. But I thought, you know what, putting all these things together and at that price, and we've had to cancel all the trips from last year, been stuck at home for the best part of a year. And
you're talking to us lot. You don't have to justify
yeah.
it at home.
You know,
Yeah,
I had space in the garage. I mean, I had to throw some stuff out and move some things around. But yeah, my CRF 300L rally turned up right at the beginning of March. And yeah, I've not been out on it much. We're doing essential travel only. So I've done one trip to the supermarket, and I've done one trip into Buxton for an eye check. And that's it in 3 weeks. Honestly, it's just there.
You could have gone all the way to Barnard Castle to have your eyes checked.
You know
that?
Actually,
yeah.
I believe that's
allowed, apparently.
Yeah. But yeah.
No, so I was going to rudely interrupt you before you then told me you bought one, which I obviously kind of knew anyway. But I am kind of the view, why wouldn't you just buy a KTM? Like, I mean, and that is pretty much all I've ridden on all the off-roading I've done. I mean, I have done a trip across Africa on a GS.
Having taken a look around several of the off-road groups, the trail riding groups, I think if you've got a Honda, you are basically the butt of everyone's joke. And I think it also comes down to time, right? I mean, this has got an 8,000 mile service interval.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not measuring the service interval in hours. And yes, it's 40 kilos heavier than an equivalent KTM. But then, you know, I mean, the reason I've got it is to ride the lanes. There's a lot of the Trans-Euro trail that runs near to where I am in the Peak District. I think the nearest entry point to it's about a mile from where I live. So, you know, what I plan to do is this year, if international motorbike travel is off again, is I'm going to see how much of the Tet I can ride, you know, over to Wales, then up into the north of England and up into Northumberland. And to have a bike that I can ride.
You're already in the north of England.
Well, I know, but you know, only to you. But yeah, so to have a bike I can ride from home to the trails. You know, the trails around here, they're all green lanes, so they're essentially unpaved roads rather than actual trails. So there's no, you know, crazy climbs. You know, other people use them. You know, walkers use them, cyclists use them, even, you know, people on horses. So, you know, and it's got the same rules as the road. You know, you have to have a road legal bike. It has to be insured. And you know what? If you're going to be tearing around those roads at KTM and Euro speeds, then you're probably not going to last very long. Or the worst case,
KTMs they're not that fast. Like, I mean, the ones I've always been on, like when I've done lots of trips out in Spain, stuff like that, the gearing's just made for off-road, right?
It is.
Rather than
absolutely.
Not about speed. I don't think it's much different to that, but yeah.
Well, I think they've generally got probably another 10%, 20% more power on top, plus 40 kilos lighter. So I think that whole power to weight thing is the big difference. But the engines are tuned up a lot more. I mean, if you look at any of the...
And you're right, they need these massively short service intervals, which...
Well, I think it was what, like sort of 8 hours, 10 hours, something like that for an oil change and filter change, which, you know, is not terrible. And I think if that's your thing, they're also not $5,000 or $6,000. You know, new they're sort of 7, 8, 9 grand.
Yeah.
And for what I need it for, I think this is gonna be kind of handy. I've also noticed that there's quite a few other people who have been after CRF 300s. People who have either been waiting for one or who are upgrading from a 250. Also, quite a few people who had got in touch who had bigger bikes. You know, maybe they've had GSs, and actually they've realised that it sat in the garage all year last year. There's no travel on the horizon this year, so you know, what's the point?
Could you not use your GS on the Trans-Euro trail?
Oh, you could definitely. Yeah.
Okay. But
and I think many people do, right? I mean, they take adventure bikes on them, but you know, it's a heavy lump to drag around. I think I can get a full set of plastics for this for probably less than the price of replacing one of the levers on the GS. And yeah, you know, for the sort of speeds that I'd be doing on that, you really don't need a 250, 260 kilo adventure bike when 140 will do just fine.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyway,
well, congratulations on the new bike in your stable.
I have to say I rate it because I've got one now. So I don't.
Well, you don't have to, but yeah.
True. But yeah,
at least for the next few months.
Do you want to know what's wrong with it?
Go on. Nothing.
Oh no, plenty. I mean, it's made to a budget, right? I mean, it's not an 8 or 9 grand KTM. It's a 5 or 6 grand Honda. So yeah, for someone of my level of health, the suspension's kind of soft. I mean, I think for nearly everyone, the suspension's kind of soft. But
lockdown's been unkind to all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I've been essentially working from fridge for the last 6 months. So yeah, the suspension is not great. You can put a bit of preload on the back. There's no adjustment on the forks at all. There is some aftermarket suspension coming out now, but it's a slow trickle through onto the market. It is kind of too heavy, compared to the other off-road bikes. I rode that Fantic 250 last year.
Yeah.
And that was just over 100 kilos instead.
I always thought you were going to get one of those.
Yeah. And so, there's a lot that's not right with it. But, for a bike that I'm not going to have to fill up with fuel every time I want to go out, I can basically fill it up once every couple of weeks. It's so far so good. And it's, the little things like the LED headlamp. I've kind of got used to it as I've got it on the other bikes, and I've got it on the car. So you kind of get used to that bright white light when you're riding in the dark. And to go back to a filament bulb, it just seems a little bit dim by comparison.
So you had to buy a new bike.
That's enough about me raving about my Honda CRF 300L. I'm sure there's plenty of people that will tell me what else is wrong with it.
Fine.
That's my thoughts on new bikes.
I didn't bring many others to the table because, frankly, I was being lazy. But I did want to bring up some kind of topics about a few things. So one of them was, if you think I'm just gazing out the window, I'm not. I'm looking at a list here. So Ducati Multistrada V4S, which was V4 and a V4S we've spoken about. But one of the features that is quite heavily featured, wrong word, but heavily spoken about is, I don't know what you call it, auto distance control. This thing
this thing stop you back ending someone.
Whatever you're into. Yes. So basically, it's cruise control plus. So it means that you can basically, it's like they call it high level automation driving or something, don't they? Right, in cars, where like in cars you can just do it where you set everything to go, and all you have to do is touch the steering wheel every 30 seconds or something, and it will keep you the correct distance from the car in the front. They've now put this on a bike, and I'm just not sure how I feel about it. Now, I've seen a couple of people's reviews about it, and some of them are quite famous reviewers of bikes, and some are sort of seem converted. I'm just a bit like, I don't know, if I buy a bike, I buy it because I want to, without sounding really ruddy cheesy, be at one with it, and I want to enjoy it and feel how it's hitting the road and hitting those corners. And yes, there are points where you have to go on the dreaded M word, or do long distance.
So just help me understand it a bit. So does it kind of apply the brakes for you? Is that, or does
it? Yeah. It slows you down and keeps you a certain distance from the car in front.
The thing that I guess would worry me with that on a bike is, what if you're you're going around a bend and you're just on the power just enough, you're basically holding it with that. And suddenly the system feels that you got a bit too close, and suddenly it applies the brakes. I mean, you're just gonna, I guess you're not just gonna suddenly like low side it, but there's always that risk, right? If it's braking when I get it when you're upright on a straight bit of road, maybe a car ahead of you slams on the anchors, and it just gives you that extra second of before your brain can tell your fingers to pull the brake.
It must be smart enough, right? I don't believe they would have put something on here without, it's Italian, but, and I'll justify that comment in a minute before I get accused of any form of xenophobia. But, I do, out of all the manufacturers, I feel like it's probably not as refined as others, but it has to apply to European standards and road safety standards. The point I make that comment is, those who don't know, I have an Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. Say that after 2 more beers. And actually recently it's really dirty at the moment, and I've had the auto braking. I actually had it brake on me the other day when I was setting off from a set of traffic lights, and there was a cyclist in front of me, and I would have made it round him, but it decided to slam the brakes on. In fact, it happened twice to me, and I keep getting it beeps first to tell you to brake. And I've had that a couple of times recently. I need to probably go and clean the sensor. Probably have a good start, but equally so, it does deploy the braking with, you can feel the ABS comes in very early, the way in which it does it, so it's very controlled. But yes, I think it would still scare the living bejeebers out of me on 2 wheels, because you'd be worried about it whipping a wheel away from you. I'm not sure. But then, I don't know about you, but the first bike I had with cruise control was probably my GS, I would have thought. And now this bike, I wouldn't live without it. There are boring A roads that I sit on, and if it's only for 4 or 5 miles, look, we did that massive Euro trip. There were a few bits of dual carriageway and stuff we had to do, and long, straight French roads with trees all the way down it that chumped up a few miles. And actually, it was invaluable for that when your hands and your body's tired.
Average speed cameras, not having to just
And those.
constantly focus on, speed between two cameras, especially on roads like that where, it's so easy for your hand just to move a fraction and suddenly
Officer.
over where it should be. So
don't get me started on average speed cameras.
So
I was on the M4 today and I was moaning about the fact that literally they're turning it into a smart motorway. Nothing smart about it.
I thought they didn't work. Anyway,
no, they don't. They don't.
So,
Yes.
So maybe, I don't know. Maybe this is the start of the future, though. I mean, I know when ABS first came out, the systems weren't great. A lot of people would actively seek out bikes that didn't have ABS. And now I think it's a legal requirement for all new bikes sold in the UK. They need to have ABS. Everything above 125 cc's, I think. So, who knows? I mean, cornering ABS was the next thing. There's many bikes now that have traction control, which I guess is doing the same thing at the other end. I guess let's see what happens. I've never ridden a bike that's got it. But
I mean, there's one thing to make riding bikes safer on the road is car drivers should stop being irresponsible. I'm trying not to swear. But like so many times, like you could, as a bike rider, sorry to go on a slight rant, but as a bike rider, you one thing is you learn to predict how cars are going to behave. And 9 out of 10 times I can spot when somebody's on their phone, usually like that, or when they're not looking, or their behavior, how they're going to swing out into a lane.
Glance down.
Yeah.
So the passenger seat's that side, isn't it?
And actually, that's the more, well, it depends which country you're in. Obviously, we've got a very international audience. But yeah, I don't think this is a safety feature. I think it's more of a cruising feature. So, but you're right. Maybe it's a thing of the future, and we'll see.
And do you know, can you turn it off?
I think it's optional whether you turn it on or not. Yeah. So I think you can just use cruise control.
I'm sure I saw someone having a rant about there's going to be a new thing that comes in that limits the speed, or that tells you if you're exceeding the
I've heard that there's stuff about this. Yeah, I'm not sure how true any of that is.
I think it's one thing if it tells you that you're going over. I mean, I think my sat nav makes a ding sound if I go over the speed limit for the road that I'm on, but it doesn't actually stop me from doing anything. I mean, obviously not that I would. He said
you can turn that off.
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, you can turn that off.
Apparently, asking for a friend. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any topics you want to touch on? I've got one more, but
no, keep going. It's you're on a roll.
You kind of touched on it anyway. So where we are in lockdown, we have also basically now being told we can't leave the country without being fined. Sorry, without having proper reason to do so. And Andre and I have been out on quite a few trips in Europe. Well, that always pisses down with rain most of the time we're there, but and we really enjoy it. And there are some of the best roads in the world to ride. And like, I'm not sure what we're going to do for 2021, but I must say there's a lot of roads in the UK I haven't ridden. So I've been up once on my bike to where you live, and there are some just beautiful roads around the around the Derbyshire Dales. Is that the right phrase?
Close enough.
Yeah. And they are amazing, but also then there's things like the NC 500 I've never been to, and parts of Wales I've also never been to. So my first, I just wrote road trips for 2021. That's all I've got written down. So like, are they out? Or actually, should we just be going, well, actually, we've got some beautiful roads in this country. Let's go and do them. I haven't spoken to you about this. But
I know. No, that's fine. I mean, I think that there's more and more places that seem to be kind of trying to do these destination laps. So the North Coast 500 is one of them.
Yeah.
I think on the plus side, it's given a lot more exposure to the roads up there. I think the downside is that now it's almost become a thing that
yeah,
do, and there's hordes of cars on it. The roads aren't that big. I'm sure that while the locals welcome the tourism, they're probably not delighted by the littering, the sheer volume of traffic that's coming through. Having said that, there are so many other parts of the country, right? I mean, if you ride around the Peak District where I am in the summer, the roads are really busy, whether it's agricultural traffic or people. Whereas if you get to the Yorkshire Dales, again, stunning roads, going to have fish and chips in Hawes and then go and ride over the tops of the hills up there. And, by comparison, it's just much, much quieter.
The roads we did when we went to the Isle of Man. So road up to where you are, and then
that was exactly that through the Yorkshire Dales. That trip up to
absolutely amazing. So like back at Harrogate, around there, where all the Tour de Yorkshire or whatever went, they still have the bikes hanging from the wires across the road, and like some of those roads, and like you said, just not as overpopulated by people doing it because it's something to go and get a badge to sew onto your jacket or stick on your top box. So yeah, there are some amazing roads, and I think I need to take some advice out of my own words and go and ride some of them.
Yeah, and you know what? I think exactly what you said, right? I mean, this year, I'm still hopeful that we'll be able to do some European travel on bikes, but at the same time, just to see how things are going with COVID and with the vaccinations, I'm still very much at the wait and see point. I mean, I talked earlier about one of the reasons for getting the 300L was to try and ride some of the Trans-Euro Trail, but that was more as a local thing. If we have these restrictions here in the UK where, they said, you can now go out, but you should stay in your local area. And, on a bike, how far does that really extend? You can get 20 miles, 30 miles away from where you live very, very quickly indeed. So, to be able to do something at a lower speed, that's one option. But I think,
and you're very lucky. I mean, the problem I have is I live in London, and so actually trying to get out to get anywhere, I mean, I'm a good 10, 15 miles from any decent roads to kind of, be less traffic heavy. And I think that's also part of the problem with, I'm going to contradict myself, but part of the problem with some of the UK trips is they're quite a distance. So, to get to, NC, I mean, I'm talking 700 miles to get there or something.
I think
that's an extreme.
As far as you can go. Yeah.
Agreed. But like even Yorkshire,
south of Scotland is tough to do for a weekend.
Yeah. But even like, Yorkshire or North Wales is on a bike is you really want to be splitting that into probably 2 days to get there. So, I think there's some challenges, but then saying that, that's kind of broken down when you go to Europe because the novelty of driving down, getting on the ferry or the train and then staying somewhere a few hours in, like really actually that's probably no different to you driving in the UK. It's just that you feel like you're doing something different because it gets a bit warmer all of a sudden when you get there, and you get to drink French beer and eat nice French food. It just feels like you're getting a destination rather than I'm sure there's probably some lovely Yorkshire tea or something.
I think there are, and maybe these parts of the country haven't really been looked at before. I mean, they're talking about more and more people will be having domestic holidays this year in the UK, and to some of the places that you mentioned, there's kind of the destination laps around the top of Scotland or around North Wales, but even places like the Lincolnshire Wolds, got some brilliant roads. Maybe not really known as much as being a biker's destination, but they're old villages. They didn't build the roads in straight lines. There's not that many people that live there, so they don't have rush hours in the same way as they do if you go near big cities. They don't have lots of people traveling from one place to another, and yet you don't have the mountain passes, you don't have the hills like you get in Europe or even in the more hilly parts of the UK. But there are still some stunning roads. There's one of the other guides that I work with. He's over that way, and he's taking me on some just really, really amazing rides.
Just for clarity of anyone listening, not the girl guides. He's talking about motorcycle guides because Andre does tours.
Oh yeah, thank you for pointing out that I'm not a girl guide. I'm sure everyone.
They're not called girl guides anymore anyway, are they? I think we're about out of touch there. I think they're just guides.
Okay, guides.
There's no differentiation between boys, brownies, cubs, scouts, all that stuff. Anyway, move on. Irrelevant.
I think that's important to clarify that, and I'm sure that everyone will appreciate it. But
thanks.
Lincolnshire Wolds, lovely part of the country. Same with Yorkshire Dales. There's even the North York Moors, which I know it's all north if you're south of Watford, but that's the little bit. So the moors that go over to kind of Whitby and the east coast. Again, lots of sort of hilly roads. I mean, it's not mountain passes with lots of switchbacks to get up them, but just some really, really nice road surfaces. Not as busy as some of the other parts of the country, and certainly if you're going to go for a couple of days, you can string these together to make a really interesting ride and visit some places that maybe people haven't visited before.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay to travel all the way to France and head out that way. And But yeah, no, anyway, so I just thought it was interesting, like, what are people going to do for road trips for the next year? I think it's going to be, you know, a lot of us like those European trips because of the, I suppose, the added extras it gives you in terms of actually going away and, you know, getting a bit of heat. But, you know, we had a pretty good summer here last year. I mean, despite all that was going on, as in from a weather perspective. So yeah, hoping maybe some UK road trips this year.
Yeah,
Let's get planning.
Indeed. Right. Well, hey, this has been it's fun as ever to catch up. It's a shame we're not on bikes. It's a shame we're not riding around. But not long now. We've only got another few days before the first stage of restrictions are being lifted.
Easy for you to say.
So high hopes for more riding in the time ahead. It feels like spring at the moment. It's warming up outside. There's definitely less ice around up here, which is always good on a bike. So yeah, looking forward to a much better 2021.
And if there's anything anybody wants us, like, we've done a couple of these, right? So we did one on my channel, and this is obviously on your channel today. And we're just keen to, you know, this is our kind of down the pub conversation. So if there's topics people want to bring up, if we should do these again, like, if we shouldn't, say that as well. It all helps with the algorithm. Give him comments left, right, and center. But we just quite enjoy doing this and having a couple of beers and kind of, you know, chewing the cud over motorbike stuff.
You know,
I'm sure there's lots to come.
We would chat anyway, even if no one else watches this. But yeah, it's always good to catch up.
Which might be the case. But
and yeah, you know, maybe we'll do another one, and maybe we'll be out and about on the roads sooner rather than later.
Definitely get planning some trips soon. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks anyone for watching. If you watch this far,
thank you guys.
Channel Petrolheads London, also on YouTube and Instagram and wherever else you get your social interaction. I'm Andre from Peak Motorcycles, and thanks a lot for watching.
Cheers, guys. Take care.